Hey, New Life Church, it's time for another TRAC devotion, and we are in the book of Acts, and we just started. We're in chapters 1 through 4, and let's just dive in. Acts is one of my favorite books, and of course, it's named Acts because it shows the actions of the church, the actions of the church body, and especially Peter in the first half of Acts, and the second half of Acts would be the actions mainly of Paul. But I just love the beginning of this. Jesus is with them, and he's ready to ascend, and he's telling them to go wait in Jerusalem, and they're going to receive power and be witnesses in their area and the next area to the end of the age. And of course, they're not sure what's going on, but they took action, and they went and they waited in that upper room, and the Holy Spirit came down. And yes, baptism of the Holy Spirit is an amazing experience, and it is still for today with the evidence of speaking in tongues. And we see that in Acts chapter 2. And from that came even more action. Why? Because they were empowered, just like Jesus said, to be his witnesses. They were empowered by the Holy Spirit. They received this power, this boldness, this drive and passion that they're not going to be ashamed of the gospel and ashamed of Jesus Christ. They were going to proclaim him to the mountains, so to speak. Anywhere they went, no matter what happened to them. And we begin to see that happening, of course, in Acts chapter 3 and now in Acts chapter 4. And we're going to see it continue to happen throughout the book of Acts, how this empowerment helped them to take action. If you're sitting there today, church, and you're reading this and you're like, why aren't I taking action? Seek the empowerment of the baptism of the Holy Spirit. And you might say, I received the baptism of the Holy Spirit. Well, ask for it again. Seek a double portion. God is always willing to pour into his children because his passion is for the gospel to be advanced. And we can do that with the power of the Holy Spirit. But I wanted to focus on Acts chapter 4. I was thinking about how God gives us free will and the power of our choices. And here we have two distinct groups. Number one, we have, of course, the disciples, and they're choosing to believe in Jesus, and they get baptized in the Holy Spirit, and they're taking action, and they're seeing miracles. And now, we have the religious leaders, and they chose not to believe in Jesus. They wanted their tradition. They wanted to keep their status. They wanted to be about them. So their choice was not to believe. And then we see how conflicted they are. Number one, they see the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and they try to hide it and lie that the disciples hid Jesus' body. They knew he resurrected, but they didn't let it soak in. Why? Because, like I said, they didn't want to let go of what they wanted and how they wanted to do it. Then they see this man in Acts chapter 3 get healed, one that they saw all the time while going into prayer. He was there begging, he was crippled, and now he's walking and leaping and shouting for joy. They knew it was him, and they saw it firsthand. And this was their response. This is Acts chapter 4. They were, first of all, it says the leaders were very angry and disturbed because of what had happened. And in verse 14, it says that the man who had been healed was standing right there among them. And there was nothing that council could say because the people already believed. They didn't, even though they saw it with their own eyes, they didn't want to receive it. They're so blinded and deceived because of their selfishness, because they don't want to give up their status A lot of it had to do with pride. And how sad is that? We have to be careful of the choices we make. Let's make sure that we don't have our own agenda. Let's make sure that we're not hanging on the feelings that we just want to hang on to because we think we have rights. Let's be sure that we are totally surrendered, totally sold out for Jesus, just like the disciples here, that we begin to allow the Holy Spirit to work in us and work through us. The Holy Spirit spoke through Peter. And in fact, that's in Acts chapter 4 too. In verse 13, it says the council, they were amazed when they saw the boldness of Peter and John and knew that these men had been with Jesus. You know, we can amaze people by being open to what God has for us, allowing the Holy Spirit to flow through us. Let's not be blinded like the council people in Acts chapter 4, seeing these miracles and disregarding it because their main concern is for what they want and how they want the church to be. God had other plans. They were so concerned about being right that they didn't care about truth. And they were so concerned about tradition and their status, they didn't care about God's plan. So let's be careful, church, on our hearts and our attitude. Let's constantly be totally surrendered and broken before God, allowing Him to pour into us, allowing Him to show His works through us, for our eyes to be open, for us to walk in the light, for us not to be deceived by our own ambitions or by our own rights or by our own wants and how we want things to be. Let's not do that. Let's see God in everything. Let's choose to be like the disciples and advance forward no matter what. They didn't care if they got persecuted, which we'll see later on in Acts, and they just kept praying and being unified and advancing the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I just say, let's be that. Be careful of the choices that you make. Examine your heart, examine your mind. We don't want to be like the council and God showing us something awesome and us missing it because we're so focused on something else that has nothing to do with God. Be encouraged, New Life Church. God has so much for us. Let's keep asking God for more. Well, have a good day, New Life Church. We love you and be blessed. Bye.